Hello there, this is Mystical Machine Gun. Death Stranding has lots and lots of these interview files, and I thought I wouldn't want to break the immersion, want to break the momentum of a stream by reading them all out, but there's lots of them. And I was hoping that since they were called interviews, they'd be read out loud, but no such luck, so this is a supplemental to my Death Stranding streams. They're posted elsewhere on YouTube, they're part of this playlist, and here is a lot of lore. Start with Die-Hardman, see how far we get. Mules and Drone Syndrome. Who? Die-Hardman. When? 2 years ago. Where? Bridges HQ. Bridges' primary objective is to rebuild America. And in order to rebuild, one of our main tasks is to reconnect cities and other settlements by re-establishing a delivery network. Back before the Death Stranding, the comms and delivery networks were what held society together. The whole thing was automated, AI managed, deliveries carried out by drone. The belief was that taking people out of the equation would revolutionize the entire system, but things didn't quite pan out that way. Instead, we started seeing cases of what would eventually be dubbed drone syndrome. It was too much for some folks to accept, leaving everything to machines and nothing for the common man. And indeed, the oxytocin deficiency and hormonal imbalances we confirmed seemed to back up that assessment. Humanity needed to be part of the process, so laws were put in place, and we stepped back into the picture again. And then what happened? All the people put out of work by machines who got called up again convinced themselves society couldn't survive without them. And that brought on a whole new disorder. Delivery Dependence Syndrome, they called it. When the Death Stranding tore us apart, the delivery problem spiraled even further. It wasn't helped any by the fact that chiral clouds prevented planes and drones from flying, which meant we had to go back to relying completely on human couriers, whether we liked it or not. Eventually, delivering goods became all some live for. They were obsessed, addicted, consumed by the desire to deliver. Over time, they turned into the mules we know and love today. Humanity's biggest problem? Logistics. Die-Hardman. 5 years ago, Bridges HQ. War and famine have been inescapable parts of human life since the rise of our species. And while the fall of America hasn't changed this fundamental truth, it's fair to say that these issues aren't pressing concerns. Can you remember the last time you heard of a prepper dying of starvation, much less someone in a not city? No one's fighting over water or oil or anything else, which isn't to say that people don't occasionally run out of supplies, but that's almost never because of a real shortage. It's usually a problem with logistics. In fact, it was to address such problems that the president created Bridges and developed the chiral network. So yeah, no one's that desperate. Everybody's got enough for themselves, which is what's led to the real problem. It's all too easy for people to become isolated from one another and eventually forget that others even exist. People are free to live themselves, for the moment, without a care for the future. The president understood this better than anyone, and I know just how much it pained her. The chiral network experiments between Central and Capital not? I'm guessing? It doesn't say. Die-Hardman, 1 year and some months ago. Capital Knot City. I'm assuming it was the chiral network experiments between Central and Capital Knot City. Madam President, this will be your new office from today. The relocation of your official residence... Oh no, it's the chiral network experience between Central and Capital 1. Madam President, this will be your new office from today. The relocation of your official residence has also been completed, and the entire medical team has been brought along as well. Rest assured that information regarding this move has been shared on a need-to-know basis only. I understand that, following the loss of New York, you wish to direct the reconstruction efforts from Central Knot City, but in light of recent separatist activity on the eastern seaboard, we no longer consider it safe. We will see to it that the people continue to believe you are in Central, and Bridges HQ will operate as normal. As per your orders, the network research teams and delivery systems management have all been covertly transferred here, to Capital Knot City. We are doing our utmost to expedite testing of the chiral network link between Central and Capital, while not neglecting your immediate medical needs, of course. This will be our base of operations for the next stage in the fight to rebuild America. The chiral network experience between Central and Capital 2. Madam President, I'm happy to report that the trial run was a success. The connection between Central and Capital was established without incident. No chiral spikes or other irregularities. The Cupid functioned within acceptable parameters as well. There's still a lot of work to do. Chiral holograms, chiral printing, and data recovery have yet to be proven viable. But the confirmation that data can be sent via the chiral network is a huge step forward for the UCA. Our next step will be to use Cupids to establish connections with the other cities. Preparations for the second expedition are already underway. We're still trying to track Sam down, but as soon as he's back with us, he'll be given his new command. Mules and local porters. Die-Hardman, 2 years ago, Bridges HQ. When people hear mules, they think junkies driven crazy by a desire to steal supplies we so desperately need to survive. Lucky for us, not all couriers are predisposed to this condition. Not all mules, in fact. They were professionals once, and some still are. Some even complete proper deliveries from time to time. Fragile Express has been known to use them, along with independent porters. For those at risk of losing it, they say the only way to starve off the syndrome is to join a distro organisation with strong leadership and support to help keep you on the straight and narrow. Or you can strike out on your own, but that's no easy path. There's a reason guys who run solo have a reputation for being bulletproof. Likes secrete oxytocin. Die-Hardman, 4 years ago. Bridges HQ. Before the stranding, the whole world was connected. There were networks, social networks we called them, that people used to communicate all the time. They shared all sorts of stuff through them. A random thought, a pretty picture, a home movie. You name it. And if you like something that someone else had uploaded, you let them know by giving them, well, a like. Sounds weird, I know, but that's the truth. Eventually, someone ran tests on the users of these networks and discovered that receiving a like triggered a rush of oxytocin. The theory was that it stemmed from the sense of being acknowledged. Even though you couldn't see the person you were interacting with, it still felt like they were accepting you, praising you, and who wouldn't like that? But that same process is at the heart of the mule phenomenon. It's believed that an overdependence on the oxytocin rush provided by these kinds of interactions is a factor in porters going rogue. With this in mind, it wouldn't be wrong to characterize mules as oxytocin addicts. In essence, they're social animals at the mercy of validation. The situation after the first Death Stranding incident. Die-Hardman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. There was a series of huge explosions. Well, not so much a series. They were simultaneous, worldwide. The global comms infrastructure was shot to hell, but we salvaged what we could and tried to make sense of what had happened. It didn't seem like much at the time, but it was a hell of a lot better than what we have now. Anyway, the government figured the whole thing was a terrorist attack at first. We'd been dealing with lots of those back then, but it didn't take long to see what this was. Something else. The craters left by the blast were bizarre. There was no rubble, no dust even, which led the scientists to rule out meteor strikes. There was trace neutron radiation, alpha rays, but we knew it wasn't nukes either. Some of the particles we detected we'd never even seen before. Chiralium, although we didn't know it at the time. The more we studied them, the more our scientists came to the same conclusion. These were the results of annihilation events. It was right about that time that chiral clouds started to form, and after that, all communication with the outside world went down for good. The terrorist view of Bridges. Die-Hardman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. The first expedition set off without any problems. Both the advance party and the rearguard are en route to the west coast as we speak. They haven't reported any trouble with terrorists and the like yet, but the further out they get, the greater the danger. There's a hell of a lot of separatists out there who want nothing to do with the UCA. Some more extreme than others perhaps, but there's no denying where they stand. Seems like just yesterday it was only ideological differences, strongly held opinions at worst. But then Chiralium started messing with people's heads, turning extremists into demons, mules into gestalt, and debate into violence. And now we're headed west, into their territory. Invaders, coming for their freedom. They're waiting for us, minds made up and guns in hand. Amelie and the others aren't looking for a fight. She's going to try to talk sense to people, convince them to join us. If all the cities sign on, our nation could rise again. No one wants to take anything from these people, only give them back what was lost. If only they could understand that. Bridge Babies. Deadman, 1 year ago. Bridges HQ. Look, I'm kind of new here at Bridges, so I don't know if any of this will be useful to you. Still, I'm happy to talk about BBs if that's what you want. They call me Deadman, on account of my familiarity with the dead. Get it? We've always been on good terms, you see. Used to have regular little chats back when I worked in the morgue. Anyway, that's also the reason I work on BB maintenance and research, to learn more about those who are no longer with us. But I digress. Fact is, BBs were already being issued to our forces in the field before I joined Bridges. What's more, research into the little guys had already been conducted long ago, but no one took the plunge and put what they'd discovered to practical use. Still, what that did mean is that when Bridges wanted to build our own BBs, most of the work has already been done for us. We just needed to follow the instruction manual, so to speak. Which isn't to say that we have any idea how they work. Not how they can detect BTs, or how they can connect this world to the other side. We still have much to learn about our little friends, but one thing is certain, their continued study will lead us to a greater understanding of the Stranding, and of life and death itself. That much I can assure you. Well, I think that's about all I have to tell you today. Hopefully I'll have something new to share next time we chew the fat. See you around, I guess. No blue in the inverted rainbow. Deadman 1 year ago, Bridges HQ. We humans are complex multicellular organisms. 60 trillion cells inside each one of us, they say. How many of these cells need to die for us to consider a person dead? Are there any cells in particular which determine whether a person is alive or dead? These questions are academic, of course. The exact point of death can't be calculated using cell counts. On the other hand, no one can deny the existence of degenerative diseases that gradually destroy more and more cells, leaving their victim, effectively, half dead. And what about me? Most of my organs have been harvested from other people. They still work, of course, but could their original owner have been said to be alive? I really don't know. Incidentally, have you ever heard of a fun little experiment they once did with roundworms called C. elegans? These creatures are notable for glowing bright blue when exposed to UV light, but only when they die. It seems to be a reaction from the anthranylic acid within the organism and is known as death fluorescence. Yep, that's right. Blue is very much the colour of death, it seems. Can it therefore really be a coincidence that there's no blue in an inverted rainbow? Timefall strengthens an area's connection to the beach. This is something to do with chiral particles becoming excited, I believe. In spaces connected to the beach, electromagnetic waves with a blue wavelength can travel easily through the seam, leaking out onto the beach. Some people think that's where the blue from the inverted rainbow goes. Who knows? The fact that blue has a strong connection to death, though, that much seems pretty inarguable. Timefall, Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ Lab. Timefall was first recorded when the Death Stranding occurred, and despite all the years that have passed since then, we are no closer to understanding how or why it accelerates the passage of time for the objects and organisms it touches, or why it immediately turns to ordinary water, having done so. Some researchers have gone as far as to posit this process as stealing time. As for why timefall is observed only in certain places, all that we know for certain is that it is somehow affected by local chiral concentration. This is merely a hunch, but something in me suspects that the Death Stranding may have warped our perception of the passage of time. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, you understand. We humans can conceive of our own deaths, and even of the possibility of a place beyond death. Yes? We have the capacity to conceptualize the future, an evolutionary advantage which aided our development as a species. Well, what if timefall has given us a new, supercharged version of this essential ability, one that will take us to the next stage of our evolution? Perhaps we wouldn't need to hole ourselves up in the knot cities. Perhaps, in time, the Death Stranding will come to be seen as a phenomenon that saved our species. Exciting thoughts, I'm sure you'll agree. I, for one, can't wait to set out on our journey. Who knows what awaits us? Necrosis and the ancient Egyptian view of life and death. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ Lab. The Egyptians believed that we humans were composed of two elements, the Ha and the Ka, the body and the soul. Various texts expound upon their nature in detail, but perhaps it is simplest to conceive of them as follows. The soul is that which joins with the child in the womb and gives life to the body. It is also that which departs the body upon death. Ergo, the body is simply a vessel. Should the soul return to it, it will live again. This is precisely what is observed in near-death experiences, a soul separated, albeit briefly, from its body. The Egyptians believed death not to be an instantaneous change of state, but a process by which the soul moves from one realm to another. This process itself is changed, thanks to the Death Stranding. In the normal order of things, when death occurs, the soul vacates the body and passes into the scene. From there it transitions to the beach, and only then onto the world of the dead. But after the stranding, a soul that has already made its journey to the beach may attempt to return to its body in this world. It was hard to believe at first, but the process of necrosis provided proof of this phenomenon that was difficult to deny. This is why it is imperative that we burn the bodies of the dead. The body must be destroyed to sever the link with the soul. Only then will the soul be free to journey to the world beyond. Chiral symmetry, Heartman, 3 years ago. Bridges HQ Lab. The word chiral comes from the Greek chia, meaning hand. Compare your left with your right. They seem similar in both size and shape, yes? Now face your palms away from you and place one hand over the other. Their shapes do not overlap exactly, but place your palms together and voila, a match. It is as if one hand is the mirror image of the other. But again, if you were to actually compare the mirror image of your hand to itself, we would see that the two are not identical. This is the essence of chirality, the state in which the mirror image of a shape does not match the original. It has been theorized that BTs are mirror images of ourselves. Were we to exist in the same point in time and space, our shapes, as it were, would not overlap neatly into one another, save in reflection. And when our particles meet their opposites, a void-out occurs. The new form of communication we have devised utilizes beaches, which are akin to mirrors reflecting this world and the other, hence the term chiral network. Chiralium, Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ Lab. You would like to know more about chiralium? Well, wouldn't we all? I am happy to present the latest theories, but you must be aware that this is all that they are, theories. Chiralium, like dark matter, was born along with our universe and has existed ever since, just not in a dimension we were able to perceive. Until now, it is the beach that gives us access to that dimension, and with it knowledge of chiralium's existence. Not just knowledge of it, of course. We have since observed it coalescing into crystalline form and recorded immeasurable physical and mental effects on individuals exposed to it. It has reshaped our understanding of reality and proven instrumental in the formulation of the multiverse theory of beaches. Chiral matter is not affected by the passage of time. As far as these particles are concerned, none has elapsed since the Big Bang. Little wonder they escaped our notice for so long, until man and BT first came together in void out and left nothing but chiralium in their wake. Many of these claims are yet to be verified, but I believe that this is a fair summary of the scientific community's current consensus on the matter. No pun intended. I shall soon be heading west with the first expedition. I look forward to learning more about chiralium and its connections to the beach along the way. Chiral Contamination 1. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ Lab. Chiral contamination is the result of prolonged exposure to chiral radiation, which is emitted by chiralium, a substance discovered at the same time as the beach. Prolonged exposure can significantly impact physical and mental health. The effects are not dissimilar from those observed in individuals exposed to extremely high levels of stress, levels which can be fatal even. Such traumatic experiences can alter hormonal secretions, impair immune response, contribute to heart failure, and induce strokes. The most common symptom of chiral contamination is poor sleep quality due to vivid nightmares. If left unchecked, however, it can quickly progress up to a more advanced stage in which the aforementioned issues may be observed. The potential impact on an individual's mental health cannot be understated. The resulting hormonal imbalances frequently lead to heightened destructive impulses towards the self and others. Those dominated by such urges are named homodemons, the mad ones. In the case of some porters, such as mules, impaired memory and judgment has led them to develop an irrational obsession with their profession, hence the Homo Gestalt moniker. While it should be feasible and preferable for most individuals to avoid chiral contamination at all costs, there are those with a demonstrated resistance who need not be so cautious. I speak, of course, of doom sufferers. Chiral contamination 2. Chiral contamination can be alleviated using similar methods to those used to alleviate stress, increasing oxytocin secretion through contact with other people, administering smart drugs, and so forth. In recent years, however, a hormone dubbed lyxin, known to mitigate the effects of chiral contamination while also restoring basic physical and mental acuity, has attracted a great deal of attention from the scientific community. Unlike oxytocin, lyxin cannot be administered externally. It is secreted within the body, but only in response to external stimuli. It is said to be the hormone principally responsible for the positive feelings that occur when one achieves a goal, enjoys success, receives praise or gratitude, or any other form of like from a fellow human being. The discovery of beaches and the concept of death. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ Lab. With the discovery of the beach, the fundamental truth of death was upended. I doubt you will find many who would deny this. Alas, we can say little with confidence in any objective or scientific capacity, for our understanding of this new realm remains in its infancy and is ever evolving, much like our understanding of the universe as a whole. Perhaps the closest thing we have to a working explanation of the beach relates to the conception of a multiverse, but I digress. The beach is arguably both a concept and a reality. A discrete beach is influenced by the mind of the associated individual, and therefore linked to them irrevocably. This is why we have so energetically pursued the psychological, psychoanalytical, and neuroscientific angles when attempting to create a unified theory of the Death Stranding, the beach, and related phenomena. There was a fad a while back in which subjects underwent counselling in order to learn more about their beaches, and in so doing gain a greater understanding of the nature of death. Doom sufferers in particular provided excellent opportunities for study. An interesting theoretical question arose during that period. If a person's beach was a product of their consciousness, might animals have beaches as well? A conundrum on the surface perhaps, but one quickly resolved. Only human corpses undergo necrosis and become BTs, which proves somewhat conclusively that only a human can possess a beach. And yet this begs another question. If all that is required is consciousness akin to that of a human, couldn't AI have a beach? An android? I, for one, do not believe so. Why? Because the function of our beaches is to connect the worlds of the living and the dead. If an entity was never born, has not truly lived, and will never know death, surely cannot have a beach. The Evo-Devo unit. Heartman, 1 year ago, Heartman's lab. It seems a rather significant breakthrough has been achieved back at headquarters. They successfully integrated an Evo-Devo unit into a chiral printer. In case you're not familiar with the term, Evo-Devo refers to evolutionary development biology. Evo-Devo. Your genes, mouse genes, dinosaur genes, the genes of every living being are virtually identical, and yet we develop into such radically different organisms. Thus, a question arises. Why did such disparate life arise from the self-same building blocks? Evo-Devo was the field of study that sought to solve that mystery, to lay bare the secrets of evolution. Before the advent of Evo-Devo, it was thought that in order to reconstruct a dinosaur, we would require a sample of its DNA. However, thanks to this technology's ability to extrapolate from existing data, we could, with the correct stimulus, grow a dinosaur from the DNA of any living organism. We could, in essence, recreate the process by which dinosaurs evolved from primeval life forms. An Evo-Devo unit applies these same principles to the problem of information and object reconstruction. With the help of the chiral network, we may take incomplete data, and indeed incomplete objects, and reproduce their complete forms. This data can then be fed into a chiral printer, et voila! Partial data yields finished product. The tech isn't viable for everyday use just yet, but when it is, it will be of incalculable benefit to our research and bring our reconstruction efforts forward by a matter of decades. Higgs particles. Heartman, 1 year ago, near Mountain Knot City. Higgs Monahan? Why yes, I know the name. The former leader of a private courier organisation, as I recall, which serviced a large region in the West, and was instrumental in providing continued support to the people living there. But as we were so far apart, Bridges struggled to maintain any measure of influence over their operations. It probably didn't help that the separatist movement has always enjoyed strong support in that territory. In the wake of growing violence by the demons, we were shocked to learn that Higgs himself was at their head. What to make of the strange development? Why on earth would a man who once commanded a group devoted to American Reconstructionism suddenly pledge himself to the cause of American destruction? His name only compounds the insult. Have you heard of the Higgs particle, also known as the God particle? It is associated with the Higgs field, that which gives all other particles their mass. Without it, atoms would fly apart and matter would not exist as we know it. In other words, its very presence prevents mindless destruction. Cosmic irony indeed. Chiral clouds and timefall. Heartman. 2 years ago, Heartman's lab. Why do chiral clouds form? Why does timefall occur? And why does it herald the manifestation of BTs? These are questions we still struggle to answer. As we now know, BTs are being formed of something akin to antimatter. Their first appearance coincided with the Death Stranding. Prior to that point, it is believed that there was very little in the way of antimatter present in our world at all. But we've since learned that this was far from the case, for even before the Stranding, antimatter was all around us. I discovered a scientific paper on the subject titled On Antimatter and Clouds. According to the paper, the gamma radiation generated by lightning strikes can trigger the formation of positrons. And indeed, particles of antimatter can be detected inside regular rain clouds. The mechanism by which they are formed is not fully understood, but the mere existence of this phenomenon is enough to suggest something intriguing. Chiral clouds contain chiralium, yes? Well, what would happen if gamma radiation were to act upon them in the same way as it does in regular clouds? Could chiralium, excited by gamma radiation, exacerbate minute distortions in space-time, somehow loosening the seams that connect us to our beaches? And if so, when the excited chiralium mixes with timefall and descends to the ground below, could the entire region beneath the clouds become much more strongly connected with the beach as a result? This could well explain why BTs appear in areas prone to timefall. Furthermore, if the antimatter we previously thought did not even exist in any measurable quantity on Earth were, in fact, present in such commonplace phenomena as the very clouds above us, would this not lend credence to the theory that BTs, beaches, the world of the dead, all of these things may have existed long before the Stranding? Too much of a theoretical leap? Perhaps. I do not deny our world changed drastically and irrevocably. Nevertheless, could it not be that the Death Stranding was merely the clap of thunder that brought this great change to our attention, and not the change itself? Giant BTs, Heartman, 2 years ago, Heartman's lab. The following assessment is based entirely on eyewitness testimony. Be advised that none of these claims have been independently verified. There are several types of BT, and the means by which they interact with the living also varies. Some BTs actively seek out human beings, while others attempt to draw us towards them. Still others are capable of consuming their prey, causing a void out in the process. It is not only their roles and behaviour that set them apart, however. Their physiology is also different. Moreover, we have anecdotal evidence suggesting the existence of some truly enormous BTs. Curiously, however, these ones do not appear to have umbilical cords. Giant BTs are comprised of the consolidated car of multiple deceased individuals. As a result, the connection between each individual and their beach is lost, which is why the resulting BT does not manifest an umbilical cord. That's the theory at any rate. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll be able to learn more about these entities until the chiral network is online, a day that can't come soon enough. The history of the Odradek. Heartman, 2 years ago, Bridges HQ. Does the name Sigmund Freud mean anything to you? He was a famous psychologist, the most famous of them all perhaps, but I digress. Freud formulated one of his most famous theories after observing his grandson playing with a spool of thread. The boy would throw the spool under the bed, thus ensuring that he could not see it anymore. He would then wind the thread in his hand, gradually drawing the spool back towards him until it became visible again. He repeated this process several times. It was apparently a game he played whenever his mother was elsewhere. Freud proposed that the process of concealing and rediscovering the spool was a coping mechanism, a way in which the boy could put his mind at ease. You see, the boy was in control of the spool. He could make it disappear and reappear at will. This helped him to comprehend his mother's absence, not as something sudden or irrational, but as something controlled, and therefore not a cause for concern. A novelist named Franz Kafka later coined a term for this spool of thread, Odradek. However, he conceived it as an object capable of speech and autonomous movement, a mysterious being, neither dead nor alive. The Odradeks we use are perhaps not so different. These interfaces through which we experience our BB's perception of their surroundings are not unlike spools of thread, a connection between our world and the other side, the living and the dead, human and BB. BTs come in all shapes and sizes. Heartman, 2 years ago, Heartman's Lab. Although eyewitness testimony has led us to identify several types of BTs, perhaps most interesting of all are the entities which may not be BTs at all. The subjects in question bear some resemblance to jellyfish and are visible even to those without dooms. While we have little information concerning their physiology and behaviour, upon detecting the presence of a human, they will attack by rapidly approaching their target before exploding. Disturbing, to say the least, especially given that they appear to be impervious to small arms fire, though perhaps we can take comfort in the fact they do not seem capable of causing void-outs. Our best guess at the moment is that these are a subspecies of BT, one that does not form as a result of a human death. Beyond that, they are a complete mystery. Perhaps when the repatriate Sam Porter chooses to join Bridges, we can attempt to develop a means of dealing with this new threat. In the meantime, however, we can but continue to study and speculate. Near-death experience. Heartman, 1 year ago, Heartman's Lab. Until relatively recently, death could only be studied from the perspective of an external observer, as the experience of one's own death could not be communicated to another. A collaborative investigation of the phenomenon was fundamentally impossible, but through the examination of subjects in near-death states and the cataloguing of their experiences, we have at last been able to bring the scientific method to bear on this most final of frontiers. Even those in a state of so-called brain death exhibit signs of consciousness. What could this possibly mean? Moreover, why do some on the brink of death report out-of-body experiences? Furthermore, why do so many of those who have such experiences describe the same sensations of being beckoned towards a distant light? Many had argued that these commonalities were evidence of an objective reality, of a place beyond life. If nothing else, they at least suggested that death was not an instantaneous change of states, but a process. The beach has since proven much of this beyond a doubt, and the dead rising again as BTs through necrosis demonstrates this process in action. The place beyond life is no longer a theoretical possibility. Its existence must be taken as incontrovertible fact. Cave paintings and stencils. Heartman, 1 year ago. Heartman's Lab. Cave paintings provide an invaluable window into the lives of our ancestors, how they lived, what they experienced. Some have been preserved here on our continent, although most have sadly been lost in void-outs. The oldest cave paintings of all are believed to date back 64,800 years or more, but all of these are, or perhaps were, in Europe. What's become of them, I wonder? Have they too been obliterated in annihilation events? If not, are the caves containing them now infested with BTs? Does Europe still exist even? One cannot help but worry that these vital records have been forever lost to us, but I digress. These first paintings were likely made by the Neanderthals. They were crude depictions of creatures such as deer, bison and horses, interspersed with stenciled outlines of large hands. Some assert these are the signatures of primeval painters, but could they not also be depictions of BT handprints? Could our ancient relatives have been trying to tell us something, or issue a warning? Or is that perhaps one flight of fancy too far? BTs and void-outs. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. The following conclusions are largely derived from a handful of eyewitness accounts. While I would advise anyone to take them with a grain of salt, I still believe they are worth sharing. BTs pursue their prey through a multi-step process. In the first, they begin searching for a target. The handprints left behind is evidence of this behaviour. Upon detection, one or more BTs will attempt to seize their target and drag it towards a much larger entity. To clarify, however, a void-out does not occur at the point of contact between the giant and the human. only once the human has been subsumed into the giant's body. We think this may be because this is the only place where antimatter is present within the entity. It goes without saying that BTs are entirely different from any creature that is of this world, and we have much to learn about them still. One thing is for certain, however, we must come to understand them, else we may never overcome the existential threat that they pose. Neanderthals are not extinct. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. Both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are believed to share a common ancestor in the form of Homo heidelbergensis. There are clear differences between the two. Neanderthals were brutish and brawny, well equipped to hunt larger animals and survive in colder climates, whereas Homo sapiens were slender-limbed and only capable of hunting smaller prey. But as millennia passed, Homo sapiens learned to create tools and hunt in packs. The Neanderthals, who actually had larger brains than the Homo sapiens, also fashioned tools of their own, but these were crude in comparison, and developed little over 200,000 years. Perhaps because these simple-minded beings favoured small family units, so that even if a breakthrough occurred, it was unlikely to be shared with others. This isolation, more than any other factor, seems to have led to their decline. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, conceived religion, with which large numbers of individuals could be bound together in service to a common cause. Strength in numbers also made their communities more resistant to famine and other calamities. In other words, Homo sapiens grew stronger through interpersonal connections, by creating what came to be called society. If we persist in our divided state, we risk losing this hard-won unity and dooming ourselves to the Neanderthals' fate. We will dwindle and die, apart and alone. But history holds another intriguing lesson. Homo sapiens did not disdain Neanderthals. The two species even intermingled on occasion. Our DNA retains vestiges of our ancient cousins even now. So you see, while the species itself may disappear, its genetic legacy may yet endure. Heartman's theory of evolution. Heartman, 1 year ago, Heartman's lab. The evolution of life on Earth could be described as the evolution of consciousness. When the first vertebrates clambered out of the oceans and onto the land, their consciousness expanded to process a new realm that lay before them. But their developments did not end there. Their eyes moved from their flanks to their fronts, that they might comprehend the depth of the world. Mammoths formed groups, increasing their chances of survival. Eventually they came together in communities, and then larger societies. In order to preserve and maintain these structures, humans developed a perception of time. And in order for societies to outlast the lifespan of the individual, we conceived of an afterlife and a future beyond ourselves. Alas, the Death Stranding threatens to undo all our progress. Consider the chiral network, which incorporates the beach, where time does not exist. Or consider timefall, which rapidly accelerates the degradation of that which it comes into contact with. How can our sense of time, honed over millions of years, remain intact when we must cope with such irrational phenomena? Yet that is but the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We are growing apart, retreating into isolation, gradually losing our place within society. I would even go so far as to say our conceptions of reality are under threat. How can they not be, when our very eyes deny the invisible BT that stands before us? The stranding has warped our consciousness in every sense. If the evolution of life on Earth is indeed akin to the evolution of consciousness, then what is happening now is undeniably a regression, is it not? There is one caveat, of course. Some of us are now far more aware of death than we ever were. That is what Dooms has given us. For me, therefore, Dooms is not merely a biological change. I prefer to think of it as a means by which I have achieved a new form of consciousness. Furthermore, I hope and believe that this new awareness of the other side is humanity's trump card as we seek to defeat the Death Stranding. Umbilical cords and Devonian era fossils. Heartman, 3 months ago, Heartman's lab. An article from an old scientific journal was recently brought to my attention. It predates the Death Stranding and concerns the discovery of a 380 million year old fossil, one from the Devonian era, to give the period its proper name. It was the fossil of a fish, and in its womb was a child connected to its mother by an umbilical cord, no less. The species, Metapicius attenborough. It's a placoderm, an extinct class of armoured marine creatures that used to live in seas the world over. Unfortunately, most were wiped out during the Devonian era, right around the time of the second of the Big Five, in fact. As you may be aware, One of the key foci of my research is the link between creatures with umbilical cords and mass extinctions. Once this area is connected to the chiral network, it is my hope that we'll be able to piece together more data that will help us learn more about the link between umbilical cords and the Death Stranding. Has this re-sorted its thing? That's weird. Okay, anyway. Did I skip one? Heartman's theory of evolution. Heartman, 1 year ago, Heartman's lab. The evolution of life on Earth could be described as the evolution of consciousness. When the first vertebrates clambered out of the oceans and onto the land, their consciousness expanded to process the new realm that lay before them. But their development did not end there. Their eyes moved from their flanks to their fronts, that they might comprehend the depth of the world. Mammals formed groups, increasing their chances of survival. Eventually they came together in communities, and in larger societies. In order to preserve and maintain these structures, humans developed a perception of time. In order for societies to outlast the lifespan of the individual, we conceived of an afterlife and a future beyond ourselves. Alas, the Death Stranding threatens to undo all our progress. Consider the chiral network, which incorporates the beach where time does not exist. Or consider timefall, which rapidly accelerates the degradation of that which it comes into contact with. How can our sense of time, honed over millions of years, remain intact? We must cope with such irrational phenomena. Yet that is but the tip of the proverbial iceberg. We are growing apart, retreating into isolation, gradually losing our place within society. I would even go so far as to say our conceptions of reality are under threat. How could they not be when our very eyes deny the invisible ET that stands before us? The Stranding has warped our consciousness in every sense. If the evolution of life on Earth is indeed akin to the evolution of consciousness, then what is happening now is undeniably a regression, is it not? There is one caveat, of course. Some of us are now far more aware of death than we ever were. That is what Dooms has given us. For me, therefore, Dooms is not merely a biological change. I prefer to think of it as a means by which I have achieved a new form of consciousness. Furthermore, I hope and believe that this new awareness of the other side is humanity's trump card as we seek to defeat the Death Stranding. Umbilical cords in Devonian-era fossils. Heartman, 3 months ago, Heartman's lab. An article from an old scientific journal was recently brought to my attention. It predates the Death Stranding and concerns the discovery of a 380 million year old fossil, one from the Devonian era, to give the period its proper name. It was a fossil of a fish, and in its womb was a child connected to its mother by an umbilical cord, no less. The species? Metapecies attenborough. It's a placoderm, an extinct class of armoured marine creatures. They used to live in the seas the world over. Unfortunately, most were wiped out during the Devonian era, right around the time of the second of the Big Five, in fact. As you may be aware, one of the key foci of my research is the link between creatures with umbilical cords and mass extinctions. Once this area is connected to the chiral network, it is my hope that we'll be able to piece together more data that will help us learn more about the link between umbilical cords and the Death Stranding. Egyptian mummies, pyramids, etc. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. At what point can it be said that man can truly understand what it meant to die? It would seem reasonable to suggest that it was when he began to bury his dead, a practice which originated within the Neanderthals. In a way, one might say that our growing understanding of death drove our development as a species, our fear of it, our attempts to conquer it. Why? It could be argued our entire history revolves around these obsessions. Take the great pyramids of Egypt, or the tombs of the ancient emperors of China. The more powerful the person, the bigger and grander their final resting place. place? Or to posit a more radical theory, could the very concepts of power and society themselves have emerged solely to facilitate the creation of such monuments, such challenges to the finality of death? Either way, in leaving behind something they hoped might endure through the ages, the builders of these edifices believed that they too might live on forever. The mummies of the Egyptians are another means by which man sought to fulfill this desire to escape the finality of death. They were created that the spiritual self, the ka, would have a physical vessel, or ha, to which it could return. The Soku Shinbutsu, or mummified monks of Buddhism, are similar in this respect. However, the monks in question aim to transition straight from life to Buddhahood, in other words, to forego death altogether. But now that the beach has brought us into direct contact with the world beyond, our relationship with death must further evolve. The next stage in our understanding is upon us. The corals of the scene, Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. Life began in the oceans, and as it evolved, it graduated to the land. At least this is what was believed until recently. To creatures of the sea, the land is a harsh and unforgiving place. Given this, what could possibly have compelled these organisms to make such a drastic transition? Consider that fossils of the first fish to adapt themselves to land have been found in regions with unusually large tidal range. Could it be that these creatures developed legs in order to more swiftly return to the safety of the sea when stranded? Could their evolutionary leap have been triggered by this traumatic experience? If so, could similar circumstances have shaped the evolution of the coral-like organisms that inhabit the scene and driven them to develop an ability to live between life and death, between time and timelessness? Coral is, after all, older than any organism of the land, and hardy enough to have weathered the mass extinction of 540 million years ago, and it is a life form upon which many other organisms rely for survival. Bearing all this in mind, one could argue that the ability to survive in the sea is indicative of a profound evolutionary leap. BTs are reaching out to us. Heartman, 3 years ago, Bridges HQ. 2.4 million years ago, Homo habilis started to craft stone tools. Hands are so very important, don't you think? Our other sensory organs passively interpret data. Our eyes light, our ears sound, our noses smell, our mouths taste. But hands are different. The touch requires conscious action. To grasp, more so. To connect that which is in our left hand with that which is in our right, still more. And the handprints we see when BTs seek out humans? Why, I'd say that's just evidence of our otherworldly friends yearning to forge a connection. They're reaching out to us, attempting to bridge the gap between realm of the dead and that of the living. Bridges needs Homo ludens. Heartman, 2 years ago, Heartman's Lab. I have already spoken at length about the new varieties of man that have emerged in the wake of coral pollution and from the resulting phobias. Homo demons, Homo gestalt, not to mention those touched by dooms. This much is common knowledge. I, however, would posit that we could further categorise the humans of this day and age. Take our comrades Mama and Lochner, for example. They are creators, are they not? People who use tools to make things. Craftspeople, Homo faber. Consider Deadman, one who looks the dead in their eyes every day, one who takes their organs as his own. His relationship with death is transcendental, sublime. It is, in essence, his faith. And he? A Homo religiosus. As myself, Homo luquens, a linguist. One who seeks to understand this world through the language of science and logic. There is, however, another very special type of human, a breed that would serve Bridges rather well. Homo ludens, they who play. Be it deliberate or unintentional, Homo ludens unite people, creating culture, shaping the very world around them, not through violence, nor laws or prescriptions, but rather through metaphorical acts of play. I know of only one person who matches this description, the one they call the Great Deliverer, Sam Porter. Despite Die-Hardman's best efforts, however, his whereabouts are still unknown. We shall leave it there for now, battery, as there's still a lot more data and interview to go. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening through. Hope you enjoyed this data dump, this lore dump on you. We'll be picking it up again very soon. Continuing with Mama's interviews. Thanks for listening. I've been Mystical Machine Gun. Bye-bye.